2 of the 9 jurors seated in the Derek Chauvin murder trial have been dismissed this morning after being re-questioned by Judge Peter Cahill. This is a live look inside of the courtroom. Defense attorney Eric Nelson. Those concerns were about impartiality after the $27 million settlement to George Floyd's family. Joining me live now to talk more about it is civil rights attorney DeWitt Lacy. Welcome back to BNC.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here, Denise.
Absolutely. Your take on these 2 jurors that have been dropped. What does it mean moving forward for this trial?
Well, it means that there's a greater opportunity for there to be a more diverse juror, a group of jurors. And really, I think this is indicative of the court trying to remedy I guess, kind of fallout from the settlement that the city announced. And the defendants absolutely made a motion to postpone the trial because they believed that that was going to affect the impartiality of the jurors. And it was a way for the court to kind of remedy that and say, well, I'll question the jurors and make sure that this didn't really affect them. And it seems like it's affected 2 of them at least.
And we know that Hennepin County, it's very hard in that county to find a large pool of black jurors. One of the jurors who was dismissed this morning was a Hispanic man in his 20s. He was one of 4 people of color on the panel. Is there a concern, or should there be a concern, that it might be difficult to find more people of color?
I hope not. Look, Hennepin County is a largely white county, about 74% white, but it's about 14% African American, a little bit in line with the national average. So, maybe there's the opportunity to have some more black folks on the jury, or some more people of color, and more women. It is obviously a concern. You want to make sure that you're judged by a jury of your peers, especially in this circumstance with the racial backdrop that surrounds this trial. But I think it presents an opportunity for the court to get an even greater amount of jurors who might reflect a more diverse, I guess, grouping of the population there in Hennepin County.
How important is that? Because we know historically, if a jury pool is mostly white in a case like this where a black man is a victim, a white police officer, there is no justice for those families. How important is it for black communities, for the magnitude of this trial, that there is a diverse jury pool in race?
I think it is extremely important. Look, we all know that the conversations change when folks of color are in the room, especially if black people are in the room. And that conversation needs to legitimately have some folks who can, I guess, represent at least some of the experiences that either George Floyd has had or other black folks in that area have had with police. Especially given that intent and maliciousness is going to be part of the prosecutorial I guess, case. So I think it's important that there are black people and people of color that are on the jury in order to make sure that the conversation accurately reflects, I think, what it needs to in this trial.
We've already heard the defense attorney, Eric Nelson, bringing up concerns to Judge Peter Cahill of jurors possibly not being able to be impartial because of that $27 million settlement. He's wanting to change the venue, possibly delay the trial. Do you think all of this is setting up for possibly a mistrial, an appeal?
I hope not, and I don't think so. Now, I mean, I think for precedent, we can look back to the Muhammad Noor trial. That happened in 2017, where the tables were kind of turned, and it was a black cop who had shot a white woman, and that certainly was heard there. And didn't need to move to some other district. Now, of course, that didn't have, I guess, the notoriety that this case has. But even still, I don't think that's necessarily going to be grounds for an appeal. That'll certainly be the drums that the defense will beat. But I don't know that the courts will agree with that.
Let's bring in our chief legal correspondent, Dr. Laura McNeil, who is in Minneapolis following this trial for us. So, Dr. Laura, Judge Peter Cahill has a lot on his plate in terms of major decisions to be made. Can you talk about the other decisions that he's weighing, whether to delay the trial, whether to move the venue, and the impacts it will have on this?
Yes, and so he said on Thursday he's going to let us know whether or not he's going to allow that May 2019 arrest record of George Floyd to be entered into the evidence. The defense wants to use that as a means of helping to prove the cause of death. Additionally, he's going to decide on Friday. He said he'll make his ruling with respect to whether or not he's going to accept the defense's motion requesting a change in venue. He thinks the defense is essentially saying that because of this civil suit, it's just entirely too prejudicial to keep this trial, here in Minneapolis. Now, what's interesting about that is Judge Cahill kind of gave us a hint that he's likely not going to allow that change in venue. He said that there's no corner you can go to in the state of Minnesota in which someone has not already heard about the trial. And he said he thinks the leaking of the plea deal that Derek Chauvin allegedly made, where he admitted to a third-degree murder charge as part of a plea deal, is a lot more damaging than this civil lawsuit. And so I don't think he's going to allow that motion of venue, but we will know the answer to that on Friday. But I do think it's highly likely that he will consider delaying the trial just to kind of let some of the hoopla die down regarding this civil suit and its possible influence on the potential jury pool.
And DeWitt, with that 2019 arrest of George Floyd possibly being entered into the courtroom, can you walk us through, as a criminal defense attorney, how that will play into jurors and their perception of George Floyd's character and what that means in this case in terms of a conviction?
Well, I'll tell you, Vanessa, I think it's a great question, and it's something that folks who are defending law enforcement actions often do to try and really assassinate the character of the person who was the victim of some type of police brutality, in this case, George Floyd. I think that is the hope, is that it will demonize George Floyd to the jury and or care less about him and make him seem less human, so as to say that maybe in some respect that he was deserving of the treatment that he got from the police, and in this case, Derek Chauvin. I just don't know that that's going to go over well. I think the video from recipient witnesses of Derek Chauvin on George Floyd's neck is pretty damning. And hopefully a jury will be able to see through whatever ploys in order to make sure that justice prevails in this circumstance.
When we talk about Black people, Black men, Black women on video seen crying out for their last breath, Eric Garner was one of them. We had Philando Castile. So many Black people on video being killed and still no justice, Laura, for their families. What happens in this case if George Floyd's killer walks free?
I think, to be quite honest with you, the Black community, not just here in Minneapolis, but across the country, will lose all faith in our law enforcement and in our criminal justice system. One of the jurors that was just questioned, a Black male, he blatantly said he's tired of seeing Black people killed and not be held accountable, meaning people not be held accountable for Black lives and the dehumanization of Black lives. And that's the message that will be sent to the Black community if Derek Chauvin is not held guilty. And so the implications are really, really high, and it's going to be a wave of impact throughout the country.
Dr. Laura McNeil, DeWitt Lacy, thank you both for your time.